Is your company moving applications into public cloud? Well, now you have problems, as your on-premises security products don't work for public cloud, traditional security assessments don't give you the real picture, and the biggest security threat is now misconfiguration of your cloud workloads. CloudNeedy offers you a cloud-native approach to manage security, data privacy, and compliance. With CloudNeedy, you gain instant visibility into your security posture and the ability to continuously monitor and remediate any deviations. Take a free test drive of CloudNeedy's continuous cloud assurance platform by visiting cloudneedy.com/securityweekly. That's cloud, N-E-E-T-I. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys, your employees, your contractors, and privileged users. 60% of online attacks are carried out by insiders. To stop these insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. Observe It combats insider threats by detecting risk activity, investigating in minutes, effectively responding, and stopping data lost. Give it a test drive at observeit.com/securityweekly. The modern attack surface is vast and permeable, extending from the data center to the cloud and device edge. Security teams are stretched thinner and thinner as they try to cover this ground. The result? More high-profile breaches hit the news every day. Don't let your organization be next. ExtraHop delivers security from the inside out, helping enterprise security teams detect threats up to 95% faster and cut staff time to resolve by 2/3 or more. Act with confidence. Learn more at extrahop.com/securityweekly. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Make sure that you join us April 1st through the 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm giving a presentation. A lot of other really smart people are giving presentations, people smarter than me. You should probably go check out their talks. Many of them are coming on the show to talk about what they're going to be talking about in their presentations at InfoSec World. infosecworld.misty.com. Use the registration code OS19-SecWeek and get 15% off. Now, at that conference as well, if you're interested in booking a briefing or an interview with us, you can go to securityweekly.com/conference request. Submit your request to do that. Basically, if you go there, for all the conferences we'll be at, are actually listed there. Black Hat's even, I think, listed there now.
Yeah, we already have Black Hat listed on the form.
Yep.
But we're kind of focused on RSA and InfoSec World because those are the two that are the closest.
Sure. So that's pretty awesome. It's really fun to see that formalized now. I like it.
Yeah. It makes it a lot easier than emails back and forth.
It grew so nicely over time. Doing conferences now is really fun.
Yeah. It's part of our brand awareness, getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously we want people to listen and watch what we do, and that grows our audience and gives us a chance to interact with our partners and just be more engaged in those events. So
yeah, doing briefings is awesome too.
Yeah.
So I want to start off with anytime you do a survey or a study, I just I don't know if it is like partly the hacker in me, partly my background in science. When I actually minored in environmental science, and we look at studies, conduct studies, and we're taught the right and the wrong way to do studies and all that stuff. And I see what I think is a lot of these surveys, for example, which is essentially like a study, right? You're collecting data. It's really a lot more about generating content than it is about really insightful analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll do a survey. In this case, Yubico is engaged with Ponemon to do the survey. And when they produce the report, it's just like, well, this percentage of respondents answered this to that question. I'm like, okay, I mean, I could read the results. What I'm really after is, what does it mean? What are the trends that you saw that are insightful, that could help us? That could,
is that more? Is that less? What is it?
What are the actionable results that would maybe force me to change behavior? Yeah, go ahead, John.
And these percentages don't make any sense. So whenever looking at it, almost half the respondents say companies are most concerned about protecting customer information. And it's like, okay, so the customer versus employee, that's an kind of an even split. But then 63% of respondents say they have become more concerned about the private and security of their private data over the past 2 years. What the hell does that mean about the other 33%? They're like, nah, we're cool. the numbers are weird. Like these numbers these questions are very motherhood and apple pie. It's almost the security equivalent of, do you like puppies? 70% of people said yes. And it's like, what the hell is going on with that 30%?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, is it the rubric that is the, like, strongly agree, strongly disagree? So maybe you'd have to really look at the results to see how they were measured. I guess that's my point.
And it's also how you structure the questions to understand,
yes.
you know, is one of these components embedded under another question, and so it's a subset of the data, or are they peers to each other? And sometimes that helps you understand, what does that percentage really mean? So a lot of it has to do with the structure of the survey itself, I think, and really trying to extract some insight out of that to say, well, 63% care, but, you know, more than half, you know, then you can maybe correlate that result. But explain it to me, because if you put to John's point, you put both of these bullet points on here, okay, I get it. But then I'm confused. I'm like, is it 63? Is it 2/3 or is it half? Or is it half of the 2/3?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And it's also, it looks like it was heavily leading the questions, like the last bullet point. Because managing passwords is so inconvenient and cumbersome, 57% of respondents expressed preference for passwordless logons. And it's like that. I hope the question wasn't written that way, because
they should have asked, how many do you get really pissed off when you lose your second factor physical access token? Yes. Yes. I freaking hate that. It really sucks.
Dude, my phone, I just upgraded to a Pixel 3.
Yeah.
My Pixel 2, I love it. My Pixel 2 got to the point where it stopped charging. And I'm looking at my Pixel 2 and I'm thinking, well, shit, that sucks. And I set it down and it's at 12%. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's my last pass. My entire life was on the phone that was pretty much busted. So I had to shut it off and wait 24 hours to get a new phone. And then I had, like, you know, probably half an hour to transfer everything over. But yeah, my whole entire life was tied up in the phone for access to almost everything. And that could have been catastrophic.
Yeah. I have a second factor on LastPass on my phone enabled. So I have, like, the USB-C, or you can use NFC. And it's so inconvenient. It's just so inconvenient.
But until somebody comes up with a better mousetrap, this is the world we're stuck in, which is username, password, second authenticator. I did brief with a company, and at some point I got to get you to brief with them. But I think they've got this technology that could potentially just change the way we think about login, username, password.
Quite a few companies working on this problem.
There's some really interesting tech out there, but as long as we stay to username, password, second factor, I mean, we're in some form of these issues.
And then it's just band-aiding the issue, really, a lot of times with...
Yeah, we have a lot of people working on pieces of this, but I think there's only a couple that are trying to really innovate in this space, and it'll be interesting to see how they play out.
I mean, but Yubico, in their defense, could have had a really great findings from this study. Someone's probably analyzing the data. They have really smart people that work there, and are probably actionable results are coming from it. We just, you know, don't get...
But then I would wait. Let's get some of those actionable insights. So let's write an article or a blog post that actually gives us a little more meat, so we know how to take the appropriate action to fix it.
Yes.
This doesn't really give me that. It's just kind of...
Agreed.
Here's what we found. Okay, good luck, folks.
Now, this next company I did brief with, and I like them a lot. And I try and... There's two salts that we've done briefings with. Right. This is Salt Security. It's API platform protection, and this is if you're writing your own software and you're building APIs into it, they can help you secure that. And they've got really good technology, and I like the team there, and I like the technology. I don't have my notes in front of me and all the details, but I don't know, John or Matt, if you read the article. I like this approach. I think it's a problem that needs to be solved, and they're on the right track to solving it.
See, and this is what we need, right? This is kind of, you know, creative security approach, finding a hole and then coming up with a product that actually fixes it. You know, tying in with Signal Sciences and kind of their approach to web application firewall is a different approach than a lot of WAFs. And with Salt, how they're looking at the APIs and being able to help secure the API calls is huge. So if you're a large organization, you're using cloud services, you're using containers, the containers are coming up and going down all the time. Where exactly is the firewalling going to be? I love Salt's approach approach for basically monitoring and securing the different API calls. So this is cool. Like, it's much better than, I don't know, 15 different new endpoint security vendors that are on the market. This one's at least creative and forward thinking.
Yeah, what I liked about this announcement, because they're trying to solve 3 problems here, which I think are all very valid in the API microservice space, right? First is discovery. What APIs do I have? I mean, the challenge with containerization is nobody has any idea where all these APIs are. Where are the API endpoints? You've got all these microservices communicating API. Discovery is a huge challenge in this space, right? So first core module, discovery, then a prevention to figure out how to protect it, and then some remediation capabilities is really what they're trying to do, is find it, detect, try to prevent, and then do some remediation to actually fix it and close it down. I think a really solid approach in a space that needs a lot of help. This is
because I can see this flying on the radar, because your requirement to your developer may be implement this feature, and then they go, oh yeah, I implemented that. And then you're like, well, what's this new API? Well, I had to like get this API library, tack it on in order to implement your feature to meet the requirement. And you're like, well, we have API is like, that's in the next two releases down.
Yeah.
Oops.
And now, like, when you pull that library in, you have no idea what all the calls are. Like, you may only be using 4 out of like 25 different calls. And one of those calls is like OSCMD. And you're like, what the hell was that?
Yep.
So no, that enumeration and that first step that Matt talked about is huge.
Just because I know, John, you're yearning to talk about endpoint security. So I'm glad we have at least one story on endpoint security.
Oh, I think I have 2.
Or maybe 2. Actually 2. So Symantec boasts an advanced protection and hardening capabilities with complete endpoint defense. I thought they were announcing a managed service around it. I thought that's what I...
No, that was the other one.
That was the other one.
That's
the other one.
Yeah, I thought that's where this article was going to, and it didn't. This article just meandered. It looks like it was written by some type of automatic algorithm that you throw a bunch of buzzwords in, and then it generates text that looks human readable.
But didn't SEP 14 or 15 or whichever version already do some of this? This is what I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't know where the there is in this announcement.
Right.
I couldn't find anything. All right, so they've incorporated advanced protection and hardening into the market-leading endpoint security solution. Okay. I thought you already did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So what is that new advanced protection hard? I can't find the anyways, I just...
So I've gotten a little bit of insight on how crap like this happens, by the way. We did an article with a company, I can't remember what company, it was some publishing company, and they had someone interview me, and they took what I said in the interview, and then they wrote an article based on that. And English was not this person's first language, and it read just like this. It just looked horrific the entire way through. And we went through and we fixed it. Rebecca went in and fixed the entire problem.
Yeah, she's awesome.
But when I'm reading this crap now, I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, I know how this happened. They basically interviewed somebody and then they wrote the article without understanding context, without understanding anything, and you just kind of end up with this garbage that just makes no sense whatsoever.
You know, having people that are technical and have a background in technology and security is really good when it comes to marketing.
Context matters, people. Okay, there's another one in here that you get all the jargon, but it's like, give me the meat, right? What does that mean to me? And you read halfway down through this thing, you can't find any details, and you're like, okay, I'm done. Well, sorry, I'm lost.
Yeah, and when I say technical, you don't need someone that understands what like John was saying, every API call and can understand the assembly that is incorporated. Like, not that. Some articles maybe if it's a technical writer, but most of the time, someone with some technical. Rebecca's a prime example, right? And the other thing is, using Rebecca as an example, Rebecca doesn't know. She's going to ask, right? She's not going to try to make shit up, right?
Exactly.
That's what separates the the really good people who are writing and those that end up with articles like this.
Yeah.
And let's get some value out of this though, because this article is a train wreck. But I think that there's a lesson that we can kind of learn out of it. I've been telling more and more of our customers, if you're looking for the bright, shiny object, like we have 2 more endpoint security articles that are coming up at least, and there's vendors that I haven't even heard of that are coming up. Don't be looking for the bright, shiny object that is going to solve all of your woes with some type of snake oil, or even if it's legitimate. If you look at something like Cylance or CrowdStrike, they are better at what they do than Symantec or McAfee. But there is something to be said about unifying your IT security architecture under a vendor. And you have DLP, you have your endpoint, you have your EDR, you have all of that tied together into Symantec, into McAfee, into Microsoft if you're using advanced threat protection. If you're basically tying that all in together into one vendor, there is value to that. You may be able to get a product that is better at one of those things or any one of those things, but does it unnecessarily make your organization needlessly complex in the process? So that's something that I think everybody needs to start looking at. And I think that that's what this article is trying to say. It's trying to say, hey, Symantec, we do a bunch of really cool stuff like, Endgame and Cylance and all these other vendors. We're here too, folks. And that is something that you should be looking into instead of like spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on the absolute best of breed in every single product category. Now, there are customers that we have that absolutely do have the staffing, they do have the resources and the funding, they do want best of breed, and you should understand if you're that type of organization, don't always try to jump and aspire to it. There is something to be said of staying with a vendor across the board.
I totally agree, and I mean that was part of what the latest version of Symantec Endpoint was supposed to do. It's just then you see an article like this, and you're like, wait, I thought you already did that. So tell me what the new value is and what you did to enhance why I should continue to use Symantec's endpoint versus, switching or adding additional stuff in. And I couldn't get there fast enough in the article. And look, you've got 30 seconds to grab my attention. After that, I'm done. And if I have to read, way down in the article to find it, I'm not going to get it.
Sophos has acquired DarkBytes.
Yeah, this was the one I think you were thinking was the last one. Yeah,
which offers some managed detection and response services, which seems to be all the rage today.
Yeah.
I feel like we cover this, and I see more companies offering these services, and I see more companies adopting these services. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but the devil's in the details and how you implement and manage the process.
Yeah, but the question is, who's in the better position to do managed detection response on the endpoint? The vendor or a managed security or a managed service provider? And so what we started to see now is we're starting to see endpoint vendors like Sophos acquire these companies. Is Sophos going to get into the services game? Because now what you're doing is you're building an MDR practice under Sophos. Is this really the right direction that some of these guys want to go?
But it's also going to cut Sophos' throat, because going to their resellers that are using that product, if I'm a reseller, if I'm an MSSP and I'm using Sophos and I'm reselling that product, and now you're purchasing a company like DarkBytes to get into that same space, I'm getting the hell off your platform as quickly as I possibly can.
Let's say something else that I can manage.
Yep. And these products are a commodity now. It's like toilet paper. And if I'm an MSSP, I'm going to find one that's going to work with me and not compete with me.
Exactly right. And that's why this is a little strange of an announcement acquisition, because now you're taking a traditional endpoint security vendor and starting to move them into the space. And look, there's well-established service providers out there that probably weren't very happy with this particular announcement, because they're like, wait, I'm the MDR. that's my space.
Yep, exactly.
Let's see. Cynets platform approach tames cybersecurity issues. Wow, it's a really fantastic.
It is, but they talk about a lot of stuff in that announcement. They talk about vulnerability management and endpoint, and so I had to go to their website. Yeah, I had to go to the website to see what was
even
going
their
on.
website was tough. Their website was still bad.
So I go in here and I'm like, okay, all in one, threats, detection, remediation. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of a SIM. It's got UEBA capabilities. I didn't see any real vol management stuff, even though it said it in the press release, unless they're partnering with somebody, and I couldn't find any of their partners on their partner page. They're trying to be the all-in-one, right? Bring everything to my platform. It looks like they're trying to displace aspects of the SIM and the UEBAs and a few other things. I'm like, We've got enough of those out there too. And I don't know. I'm not sure how this is going to play out for them, but
we wish them the best, though.
We do, absolutely.
Every
we wish
time.
all
Their
security vendors the best.
Yeah, their interface looks cool.
Yeah, that did.
Yes, that looks neat.
I think there's so many different subsections of subcategories of this, and as you know, if you're working for an enterprise and you're in the market for something that gives you better visibility and takes data from multiple sources, I mean, you've got hundreds of different options.
Yeah,
and wading those waters is very challenging. I see vendors like this all the time.
Yeah,
crop up.
It's EDR, ransomware, incident response, UEBA, forensics investigations, deception, and advanced threat protection, all in one. Yeah, that's your SIM. That's there's a lot of solutions that are already doing this.
If you've ever heard me talk about my enchanted quadrants, right? Like you get data from the network, you get data from your logs, you get data from the endpoints, and you get data from threat intelligence. How do you bring all that together? There's a couple hundred ways to slice all that. Right?
There are.
So,
and most of them are a pain in the ass, and they're hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I believe these are all now funding rounds. Cato Networks has raised $55 million to protect cloud-based computing devices. Let's see, they've raised $125 million. They say they close a huge gap between the needs of digital businesses and the rigid, slow, and expensive networks provided by legacy telos. That's what they say.
Yeah, so I know a number of the investors here, Lightspeed, US Venture Partners are in here, and some other things. I mean, think about this as a cloud-based. They call it's an SD-WAN, right? So they're coming the software-defined networking WAN in the cloud that allows you access to various components in the cloud, on-prem, etc.
It's like a VPN on the internet.
Kinda is the best way I could.
But you don't necessarily have to maintain all of your own hardware and endpoints, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't have to do
because it's software-defined.
Right. Because software-defined, it's sitting up in the cloud. The one challenge I have with these technologies is we're still forcing everybody to a single point, the single tunnel to get to anything on the internet. I'm not sure that long-term is the right way to solve this problem, just because if I'm a user on the internet and I want to get to something on the internet, why do you shove me through this cloud-based VPN? I get it because
so I can make sure you're not being a bad boy and violating policy.
True, that's true.
That's why.
But I think that gets hard to manage over time. And I think when the whole world flips upside down and everybody's outside of the firewall, I'm not sure shoving everybody back through a VPN firewall-based cloud solution is necessarily the right answer. It'll be interesting to see how these technologies evolve over time.
Yep. I mean, there are companies doing really well with it. I mean, Netscope is doing really well.
But that's where these guys are.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is going to be a tipping point. I started talking about this a while ago, where more and more of our customers are moving more and more of their infrastructure into cloud-based services. And I think it's going to be a very, very abrupt shift where organizations are basically going to say, why exactly are we running an internal Active Directory environment where we can use Azure AD, where we can have all of our files in the cloud, and Microsoft offers all kinds of great security features built into that. I think it's going to be fast. And if I'm talking to anybody at all, and they say, well, we're planning on building up our infrastructure for our new company, there's no way in hell I'm going to tell them to stand up an Active Directory for us, set up a DMZ, set up your firewalls. There's just no way that that's going to scale over the next 5 to 10 years, especially with the way workforces are now, being mobile, bring your own devices, and trying to compete for talent to make it a cool place to work. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen fast. And that's why when I see these types of funding rounds, I can look at this and go, yep, that makes sense. That one makes sense to me, for sure.
I still think that there's going to be an economics factor that forces companies at various stages for various projects not to put things in the cloud and use SaaS-based products. I mean, we've seen that here, Matt, right? Like you add a cost per user per month, and then as you add more features on, like Active Directory as an example, now you want more features, you pay more, and you pay more. Like, at what point do you just tip the scales and go, wow, I'm paying more than I was before hosting it myself. And I think we need to balance that. And again, it's different size companies at different stages for different solutions. But I feel that pain sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes in projects that we do and others that I see doing.
And I agree, right? And I think that that's any vendor that's working in that space has to be very conscious of how they're setting up the pricing. And I think Microsoft is doing better than most vendors whenever they're setting up pricing for new services that are in the cloud. Like if you're trying to enable security analytics in Office 365, I think that's like $8 per user per month, which is dirt cheap, right, compared to a lot of other products that you can purchase. So yeah,
until they raise the price, though, that's what I don't like about it. Is it's not, if I buy a piece of hardware, my costs are pretty fixed, right? That cost can fluctuate.
Microsoft has the advantage because they just put it under the ELA and they bundle it all together, where other vendors don't have that same pricing leverage capability that Microsoft does.
Yeah, and also Microsoft always discounts the hell out of everything with their customers anyway.
They do.
If you're paying full price, you're a chump.
Yeah, most large companies, Microsoft, Cisco, and others do as well. But what I think is interesting technology-wise is, I think as containers and microservices become more mainstream, it's going to be pretty cost effective to have local devices and systems running those containers. And I've already seen a couple that are very specific to running containers. It can run a ton of, I mean, you could have 2 of these devices mirroring each other in the internal network, maybe for a fraction of the cost of what you would host a lot of that stuff.
That's where we see the edge use case the most. I've seen the most use for that, right, is you want compute close to that environment, to those sensors for latency and other things. You're not going to shove all that data to the cloud. Those edge cases make a ton of sense to stay very close and kind of on-prem-y, even though aspects of the data and the control and the policies may be cloud-based. But I think you're going to continue to see that edge, and that edge be a very lightweight edge running container systems. That's going to continue. That means hybrid is around for a long, long time because now we have to not only deal with multi-cloud, but we are going to be dealing with edge devices and still some data centers in this hybridized world. The question is, is a SD-WAN the right way to do that, or is there something really disruptive coming that allows us to not have to bring everything into a central place to potentially create latency and other issues? And a lot of these solutions require sometimes they have to replicate data in the cloud to make it faster, but then that becomes a potential attack vector. So there's a lot of considerations when you think about, okay, if I'm using one of these things, does it add latency? Is it exposing my data in a way I didn't want to? These are all considerations I think people need to look at.
There was a funding announcement from an Israeli startup called Medigate. They did a $15 million Series A in the medical security, strategic partnerships, integrating security vendors. I'm trying to get to exactly what they do. Of course, Oh,
I got this one.
Go for it, John.
Yeah, this one caught my attention. So in a lot of hospitals, you have a ton of different devices. I think we all know that, right? These specialized devices. And a tremendous number of these different devices, they actually call back in many situations to their vendors. I was just on site recently with a hospital where we were running AI Hunter, and we identified a whole crap ton of these devices that are beaconing out constantly. They're sending out logs, they're sending out telemetry, and some of these devices, I heard a story from the customer, they actually have remote access that's built in, and it has to be on. So they actually had a situation where one of their vendors got compromised. Once the vendor was compromised, then the attackers got access to all of the customers, i.e. hospitals, by the back channel to remote access all their different devices that were sitting on Active Directory, and a whole bunch of hospitals got compromised that way. So when you're looking at something like Medigate, I think it's an absolutely brilliant approach because there's clearly a need. It's also a very niche market, and it's a very niche market that'll actually pay for a specific security solution that'll actually solve that specific problem. So it does make sense because there's tons of different devices showing up all over the place. There's a lot of legacy applications. How do you inventory all of those applications? How do you inventory those devices? How do you identify who they're beaconing out to? And how do you actually identify if there's any security risks associated with it is huge. And I looked at how Medigate is doing it and doing it passively on the network and identifying these different devices through a number of means. It's a solid approach if you're a medical institution for sure.
Yeah, I was, this problem, kind of hit me in the face when I went to visit my friend in the hospital. She just had a baby, premature, and when you look at all of the monitoring devices, that they're using in for that specific situation, you're like, wow. And it's not just like you think of IoT devices, outside of industrial controls and medical, and you're like, yeah, like turns the lights off and, maybe controls some fans. And then you go into these devices like ICS and medical, and they're monitoring very people, babies, and all of the devices connected. I'm like, oh my God, that's
all
a
the
security
telemetry, the heart machines, all the imaging machines, all these are in that environment. What I see this as, John, a little bit as a very focused industrial IoT kind of security solution, right? Think of these are industrial IoT type systems, right? They're on the network, they're doing activities, they have to communicate, get updates, have maintenance. This is a very specialized case where traditionally what we've seen is vendors going after IoT or industrial IoT as a whole.
In a huge spread, yep.
Right, huge spread. This is a very focused solution that says, look, we're going to protect the medical equipment in the hospitals, in the environments, create, just solve that problem. They're not trying to solve the power plants, the electric grids, all the other things that are out there. This is very focused. And U.S. venture partners who, again, Jacques has actually mentioned in this article, they have a number of other companies, both in the security and the healthcare side. So from an investment perspective, this fits their portfolio really well, really securing the healthcare side of the equation. If somebody else wants to go after the broader or other areas, I'm sure Medigate's like, yeah, I'm okay with that for now.
Well, and Medigate is awesome. Like if you actually look at the interface, they actually show you a picture of that device. And I know that seems like a goofy gimmick, but this site that I was on, we were finding devices that were beaconing back, and then we were working with people trying to find the device. We would have the MAC address, we could see the manufacturer, we might get an idea of what range of devices it was from a vendor, but we didn't know the specific device. It is stupid awesome and incredibly effective if you can basically say the device looks like this. This is what this thing looks like. Go find it. And being able to get that to your on-the-ground IT staff to be able to discover those things. And from a sales and marketing perspective, it goes further to show that it is a highly tailored solution for medical institutions. And I just think that it's just a really well done package on this company side.
Did you guys look at the technology from ReSec, I think is how you say it, which makes sense when you kind of understand how their product works. Yes, they are an endpoint protection vendor, but what it looks like they're doing, haven't done a briefing with them yet, but if you dig around on their website, it says their platform processes all files, analyzes the content structure, and then rebuilds a duplicate file, no loss of functionality. And I think what they could be saying is they're stripping out bad stuff. I mean, we all know the system calls and other things that typically lead to some type of compromise or backdoor. It sounds like that's what they're doing.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit, wasn't it Endgame that created some behavior capabilities of files on certain file types?
There are a lot of vendors doing very, very similar things. Not exactly the same, I don't think, but similar things, absolutely.
Yeah, but that's what these guys kind of look like, right? They're not relying on signature-based detection. They're actually trying to do it more looking at the file and what's in the file and can I strip it out?
I think they're stripping active content, right? So if you have a macro in a document, it identifies it, strips it. If you have any active content in a PDF, strip it. And I think that's cute. But a lot of attack vectors, like this is a very small percentage of the overall attack vectors. I mean, to be honest, we do use macros, absolutely, constantly to break into organizations. However, a large number of our attacks are actually direct memory injection attacks. We can actually, the malware itself is not in the file. The file itself is a stager that reaches back and then injects the real malware up into memory. And that is going to be a little bit more difficult. The first time I ever saw this, it was done by T.J. O'Connor in a hacking competition, I think between Army and Navy. I'm not exactly sure which one, but he actually wrote a SANS paper on it and actually released the code where it could see files real time, analyze the files, strip the active content out, and then allow the files to go through. So this has been around for a while. I think that was about 8 to 10 years ago. And I am concerned about this actually taking off to the point where it is actually useful and this company actually surviving.
I'm interested to see how these technologies evolve and who's going to be the big winner. Because I think there will be a big winner in this space of these active protection. We've seen a lot of them. I think.
Yeah, but are they standalone vendors, or are these vendors, this technology get embedded into broader endpoint plays, right?
Sure.
I think that's the bigger question.
Because you see, ReSec is one. There's another endpoint vendor out there. Capsulate is doing not this, but something similar to protect Linux systems. Doing a very, very good job. I did a briefing and a demo with Capsulate. I'm like, I want this in all my containers because it makes it really hard to exploit a Linux system, and the way they hook in is a very proprietary method, and basically based on what they're observing, behaviors and things that go against, what a system normally does. I mean, they've got that pretty well licked. I mean, I was asking some hard questions, and they're like, no, we'd catch that. Like if I just rename the file, they're like, no, we're hooked into the Linux subsystem so deeply that it doesn't matter if you play all those cute tricks. Like on Windows, John, like if you rename PowerShell.exe, like you bypass a lot of things. A lot of like ReSec and Capsulate, they'll catch that stuff because they're hooked in so deeply.
My only concern with these technologies is when I strip out the underlying Linux system in a serverless world, how do they work?
Yeah.
Because that's the next evolution of where infrastructure is going. And if it's great that you're hooked in that deep, but the question is, when I'm running in environments like Fargate or other environments where there is no place to put those hooks, now how do I do this stuff?
So either your provider, we've had this conversation, right? Either your provider's got to run it, or they have to come up with a way to accomplish the same thing in a higher level up.
Correct, without being hooked into the underlying host. And that's the next big challenge, I think, in the industry.
And I keep coming back to the biggest concern that I have for this is looking at attack vectors that we were using. I mean, we still use it to a limited extent, but this, like from what I'm seeing, like how they're analyzing files through FTP while it hits the device on web and on email, they're just not going to work. It just isn't. And that has a lot to do with how you actually inject that memory, how you use core operating system libraries, like using bits to do the download to actually pull and execute, using the C# tricks that Marcello's coming up with. So I that's my concern, is this seems to be a very, 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 very narrowly defined subset of what they're doing. And let's say that they do it better than anybody else on the face of the planet. It's still ignoring like 70% of the types of attacks where malware is actually injecting itself into memory on computer systems.
This last one, the link is broken, apparently. I had to really work to find their announcement.
The
it's a blockchain.
Anchain.ai?
Yeah. It's a blockchain company, which I'm in search of.
I got
some blockchain. We've found a couple. They've been more common this year than I think last year. Matt and I, John, basically looking at, and we've talked about blockchain before and how it applies to information security, above and beyond the currency aspect of it.
Yeah, you had to go out. There's a Medium article blog on this one because I wanted to know what they were actually doing.
Yeah,
and it's two unique products. One is what they call contract auditing platform.
That's the smart contract. There's a lot of vendors that are applying blockchain to the contract, to basically chain of custody for a contract. Right?
Yeah. And so this is a containerized cloud SaaS offering to do the contract auditing component. The second product is what they call situational awareness platform. And that's to proactively protect smart contract assets like ETH, ERC20, BTC, et cetera. So it looks like it's a combination of two products that make up this company. That's what I wanted to try to get to, is what are they actually doing with blockchain? And it looks like some contract auditing and some protection around the contract assets themselves. Don't know exactly how it works, but there is a Medium blog post on this.
And Greylock Partners was one of their participated in the initial seed round. They funded a lot of other, I feel like, security companies.
Yeah.
Well, and I still come back to with blockchain. I think it's absolutely important, especially for security professionals, to understand the concepts of smart contracts and how that's going to work moving forward in the future. But my concern is a lot of the applications of blockchain. We already have technologies that have solved that. Like that's not a problem. Like databases do a lot of stuff that blockchains can actually do. And I like the smart contract. I get it. And if they're in on that, but I don't know. We're going to have to look a little bit further as far as what they are doing. Does it do anything beyond smart contract auditing, to be honest?
And it doesn't necessarily look like it. except for maybe their situational awareness platform can do something, but they don't get into the specifics, so I don't know how they do it. But when I first read the announcement, AI-powered blockchain security company, I'm like, yeah, there's a few buzzwords pulled together. That's why I had to go find some details, because I'm like, I don't know what that is.
They actually coined the phrase blockchain advanced persistent threat.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, that rounds out the stories. On that note, that will round out the stories for this week. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.